Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 82 based on novel. So let's start. After parting from Qinzhong, Xiao Yan turned his direction and quickly swept away to the south of the city where Luo Laro was located. At present, although the Liu family's affairs have been solved, there is still one thing in Xiao Yang's heart that has not been solved, and I'm afraid only Laro Luo can help him. In a short moment, Xiao Yang had come to the south of the city, outside the shabby courtyard. After 2 years, Xiao Yang came here again. He couldn't help sighing in his heart. 2 years ago, I came here for the first time to seek Luo Laro's help and repair Xianchong ruler. 2 years later, I came here again. I don't know if I can get the same answer as last time. When Xiao Yang entered the courtyard, he didn't hesitate. The light in the palm under his sleeve robe flashed, and the soft milky white light covered Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang moved and disappeared into the void. He opened his eyes again. Xiao Yang had appeared in the spirit world. Entering the spirit world, Xiao Yang saw the vast mountains at the first sight. Compared with the outside world, it is more like a fairyland on earth and a paradise. I'm afraid it's just like this. At least, there are no intrigues from the outside world. When Xiao Yang appeared in the spirit world, there was a figure flying rapidly in the mountains and forests in the distance. Xiao Yang smiled. It was Luo Jin. They said hello from a distance. Xiao Yang bullied him and smiled at Luo Jin. It seems that you expected me to come, so go ahead and wait for me here. Luo Jin also smiled non-committally when he heard the speech. Since Xiao Yang is ready to leave, Luo Laro and Orochi will meet before leaving. In 2 years, I don't know if they are doing well. When he came near, Xiao Yang smiled and asked Luo Jin again. Hey, the two of them stay here all day to enjoy their happiness. They live much better than you and me. Luo Jin said with a laugh. Immediately, they moved and flew away side by side towards the depths of the mountain forest. A moment later, they fell together outside the cabin in the forest. At this moment, Luo and Orochi sat opposite each other. 4 cups of fresh tea were placed on the bluestone table years ago. Seeing the second old man, Xiao Yanli bowed respectfully and bowed his hands and said with a smile. Younger generation, Rock Owl, meet 2 predecessors. Hey, but after 2 years, how did the little guy become polite? There's no need to be polite in front of us. Get up quickly. Luo looked at Xiao Yang with a smile and felt the breath in the latter's body. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a slightly surprised tone. Tut, it's true. It's a 5-star and a half emperor, but the fighting spirit is slightly vain. It seems that you still need some time to run in. However, with your cultivation speed, it's more terrible than when we 2 old guys were young. As soon as he said this, the green wood on one side kept nodding and praising. Among the younger generation they know, Luo Jin is the only one who can have such a talent for cultivation, and a great part of the reason why his strength can be improved so quickly is also from the skill Luo Jin practiced. In front of Xiao Yang, however, with his own efforts, he improved the strength of the 2 stars within 2 years. Even if this cultivation speed is placed in the central region, it is definitely the existence of various schools competing to win over. Several people chuckled and Qingmu looked at Xiao Yang with a light frown and said, Listen to Luo Jin, are you ready to leave? When it came to the point, Xiao Yang nodded firmly. Luo Ao and Orochi looked at each other, then nodded and said solemnly to Xiao Yang. This is your decision, and we have no right to interfere, so we can only wish you a safe journey. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang arched his hand at Luo Laro to show his gratitude. The latter also nodded, and then continued. In addition, you have the fighting skill of Tianzibu. You must be more careful when walking in the western regions. The 4 ancient sects in the western regions have been thinking about this for hundreds of years. Up to now, they are still investigating the residual forces of that sect. It is enough to see that they are bound to get this thing. Therefore, you must be careful. 10,000 all things must begin with their own lives. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang also nodded solemnly. He had already been prepared for this. When he arrived in the western regions, he would try to keep a low profile. After all, even he dared not face the Pope's door with the strong emperor. Don't worry. I'll go to the western regions with brother Yang Xiao. If necessary, I won't be afraid of him. Hearing Laro Luo's solemn words, Luo Jin grinned, as if everything was wrapped in him. Seeing this, Luo Laro shook his head and sighed. Little rabbit, The reason why you despise the 4 main gates is that you have the ability by relying on the forces behind them. Like the rock owl, you can face the 4 fighting emperors alone. Hearing this, Luo Jin immediately retracted his head, put out his tongue, smiled and dared not speak more. Luo Laro also threw a big white eye at him and was too lazy to pay more attention. Xiao Yang smiled helplessly when he saw this. Compared with Luo Laro's words, he envied Luo Jin. Their own cultivation talent is not weak. They also have cunning skills, and their strength is not poor. They have less practical experience, but on the whole, they are not much worse than him. The biggest difference between the two is that the former not only performs extremely well in all aspects, but also has a force that can be relied on behind him. If he can fight well, he can only hide everywhere. But at the same time, Xiao Yang also firmly believes that one day, he will no longer be oppressed by others and will no longer rely on the strength of others to preserve himself. He firmly believes that under this endless oppression, he will only grow more rapidly. After all, isn't Xiao Yang's path of cultivation just like this? Oppression is more powerful. Growing up in adversity is Xiao Yang. Luo Ao and Orochi saw Xiao Yang's resolute look. They couldn't help but pick their eyebrows. They immediately looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. A moment later, when Xiao Yang recovered his mind, Luo looked at Xiao Yang with a smile. His dry palm slowly put down the teacup in his hand. Luo stared at Xiao Yang and said with a smile, "Little fellow, you should not only come to the spirit world to visit me." When the voice fell, Xiao Yang couldn't help but slightly raised his eyebrows. A touch of surprise flashed in his eyes, and then a slight smile arose from the corners of his mouth and asked, "Hehe, why do you think so?" This strange conversation between the two people suddenly made Orochi and Luo Jin feel at a loss. They looked at each other, but they all saw the look of doubt in each other's eyes. For Xiao Yang's rhetorical question, Luo smiled faintly, his eyes narrowed, looked at Xiao Yang jokingly, and said with a light smile, "Hehe, you have the right to be my intuition." Xiao Yang listened in his ears, but put it in his heart. He naturally didn't believe his intuition. Haha, to tell you the truth, I want to see 2 elders during my visit. I really want to ask old Luo for help. The 3 of Luo Laro looked at each other, and finally all fell on Xiao Yang. Luo Laro's mouth slowly aroused a smile. His polished old eyes stared at Xiao Yang and smiled silently. He always felt that the guy in front of him would give him unexpected treasure again. It's not hard to hear from Xiao Yang's words that Xiao Yang's so-called busy is afraid that only Luo can help. In that case, the answer is obvious. In this world, I'm afraid there's nothing else to ask Luo Ao for help except for refining tools. Looking at Luo Laro, who was just staring at himself, Xiao Yang also grinned, and a look of Sai appeared in his clear eyes. A moment later, in the expectant eyes of the 3 people in front, Xiao Yang waved his big sleeve and paused for a while, and the shadow of the 4 people was covered by a huge shadow. On the wide open space, the dazzling sun cast a shadow like a hill, which changed the color of the 3 people present. Boom! With a violent roar, a wide open space in the forest in the spirit world suddenly shook like an earthquake. In the sight of several people in this carving field, a green and gold medicine tripod with a full height of 3 feet is just like a hill, standing in front of several people in the field at the moment. The tall tripod body cast a huge shadow in the reflection of the sun, completely swallowing the shadows of several people into the shadow. The sudden darkness, coupled with the reflection of the sun, within a few seconds, Luo 3 people couldn't help being fascinated by their eyes and didn't dare to easily look up at the sudden giant in front of them. After a few breaths, when the 3 people looked intently, standing in front of them was a huge medicine tripod. When the 3 saw this, their eyes suddenly coagulated slightly. Luo Jin's eyes also showed a look of surprise. He had seen the medicine tripod in front of him before, but he didn't mention it to Luo Lao, but he didn't know what the purpose of Xiao Yang taking it out again at the moment. Seeing the huge medicine tripod in front of him, Luo Laro and Qingmu couldn't help but be surprised and looked at each other. When Luo Laro and Qingmu saw the medicine tripod in front of them clearly, a look of shock appeared on the old face. Although Luo Laro is a tool refiner and usually can only refine some weapons, he will also be involved in refining medicine tripod. Although their attributes are different, their refining methods are similar. Moreover, especially for some items with special refining techniques, the smelter can understand some new things. At the moment, Luo Larodang recognized the magnificent medicine tripod in front of him. The medicine tripod in front of him ranked second in the Tianding list. Luo Tiantian tripod. This is the second in the list of Luo Tiantian tripod. Looking at the huge tripod like a hill in front of him, Luo Laro and Qingmu were shocked. It was hard to imagine that Luo Tianshan tripod, which ranked second in the list of Tianding, would appear in Xiao Yang's hands. If the news gets out, the trouble Xiao Yang will face in the future will be dozens of times more difficult than now. With this in mind, the two old men suddenly showed a dignified look on their faces. The Tianding list, not to mention the ranking of Luo Tianshan Ding on it, is just the medicine tripod on the Tianding list, which is the longing of all herbalists in the mainland. In the minds of some herbalists, the weight of the Tianding list is no less than that of the different fire list. Even, in the minds of some herbalists, the value of the medicine tripod on the Tianding list is no less than that of the different fire. For the medicine tripod on the Tianding list, some herbalists are extremely poor and can't find a tripod all their life, but they can't imagine that there are such amazing treasures on Xiao Yang, who is young now. Boy, this thing has disappeared on the mainland for many years. Unexpectedly, it will fall into your hands now. I don't know whether it is a blessing or a curse. Luo Laro looked at Xiao Yang solemnly and said solemnly. His words all contained the meaning of being alert to Xiao Yang. Although Luotianshan tripod is the second highest medicine tripod on the list of Tianding, it is precisely because of this that the trouble he has brought to Xiao Qin will be endless. Once the news that Xiao Yang bears Luotianshan tripod spreads, I'm afraid all herbalists in the whole continent will be shocked. After all, Tianding list is not just for fun. Hearing Luo Laro's words, Xiao Yang also nodded solemnly. How could he not know that every man is innocent and vindicates his sin? Since he has borne Luo Tianshan Ding, naturally he has already thought of the worst result. But he doesn't worry. At least, he is sure to keep the medicine tripod in his hand for a period of time in the future. The medicine tripod has been started. Xiao Yang won't give up easily. Seeing the solemn look on Xiao Yang's face, Luo couldn't help nodding, frowning slightly, and alerted Xiao Yang. Remember later, take this thing out as little as possible. Once it is found, you will be in trouble. Xiao Yang nodded again. He knew the truth. Before he had the strength to hold Luo Tianshan tripod, he had to hide it in the ring first. He reminded me again that Laro Luo focused on the Luo Tianding in front of him. Just now he just took a general look. Therefore, he didn't see the medicine ding in front of him very carefully. When Luo looked carefully at the medicine tripod in front of him, he immediately found some clues. Hiss! Luo Laro's eyes were frozen, and he couldn't help taking a breath of cool air in his mouth. There was a surge of surprise and disbelief. Under Luo Laro's careful observation at the moment, the statue of Luo Tianshan tripod in front of him is actually full of crack. For a medicine tripod, it's almost as close as scrap. What's more, the medicine tripod in front of us is the Luo Tianshan tripod, which ranks second in the list of Tianding. What's the matter? Why did Luo Tianding look like this? As the voice of the words containing incomparable surprise fell, his turbid old eyes immediately looked at Xiao Yang. At the same time, Luo Jin and Oroki on the side also took their eyes away from the medicine tripod and turned to Xiao Yang. In this regard, Xiao Yang had to spread his hand reluctantly, and then told the three people in front of him about the damage of the medicine tripod. When Xiao Yang finished his narration, the three people knew the reason why Luo Tianding was damaged. Luo also nodded with a little regret. It's hard to imagine that Luo Tianding, who ranked second in the Tianding list, would be hurt like this by a Source King. However, Luo Laro also knows that the medicine tripod like this has long been able to integrate with its owner. The most important thing is to see its owner. If the master's strength is strong enough, not to mention the Source King, even the Source Emperor and the Source Sect, can't destroy it. On the contrary, if the master who owns it is weak, just like the previous master Ju Tong, his own strength is insufficient, and he uses Luo Tianding as a shield to bear the full blow of a strong man at the level of the Source King, the result will not be much better. From the current point of view, now the Luo Tianding can still keep the prototype unchanged, and most of the structure remains intact. A great part of the reason is also due to the strength of Ju Tong. Walking forward, Luo Laro stroked the dense small cracks on the medicine tripod with his dry palm. Finally, his thin fingertips stopped on the knife marks that had dissipated the knife chi. Luo Laro frowned, looked at Xiao Yang, and spoke slowly in a dignified tone. Boy, you found me a problem this time. In the spirit world, Laro Luo was looking at the blue and gold tripod in front of him solemnly. A pair of turbid old eyes showed a deeply dignified color. After a long time, Luo Laro slowly lowered his figure from the air and looked deeply at the medicine tripod in front of his eyes again. Then, Luo Laro turned to Xiao Yang and frowned. Seeing Laro Luo's appearance, Xiao Yang couldn't help but tighten his mind slightly, and his beautiful eyebrows wrinkled unconsciously. Can it be said that even Laro Luo couldn't help it in the face of Luo Tianding? Old Luo, this medicine tripod? Xiao Yang asked tentatively. When he spoke, the palm under his sleeve robe couldn't help holding it slightly, and there was a nervous cold sweat in the palm. Seeing this, Luo Laro frowned, his hands slowly behind him, his back to Xiao Yang, and shook his head helplessly. Seeing this, Xiao Yang's nervous breath suddenly stagnated, and his eyes showed a little regret. Alas! With a helpless sigh, Xiao Yang smiled bitterly and sighed in his heart. It's a pity that Tianding ranked second. It was destroyed by a Source King. It's really outrageous. Xiao Yang was helpless. He didn't expect to enter the spirit world this time. He thought that Eluor's strength should be able to repair Luo Tianding, but he didn't think that even he gave such a disappointing answer. Reluctantly waved his sleeve. Xiao Yang stroked his sleeve and wanted to take Luo Tianding, who had been sentenced to scrap, into the ring. Anyway, this is a whole piece of Qianyang green gold. Although it is damaged, Xiao Yang doesn't intend to discard it. After all, the value of this thing is not just for refining medicine tripod. As far as a piece of Qianyang green gold with a big fist is concerned, its value may be enough to impress the strong fighting emperor. After all, the rarity of this metal material is no less than that of Yang meteorite black iron. Fortunately, the damage degree of this tripod is still within my expected limit. However, at the moment when Xiao Yang wanted to receive the medicine tripod into the ring, Luo didn't know when to turn around, looked at Xiao Yang jokingly and said slowly. As soon as the voice fell, Xiao Yang's face solidified in an instant. In an instant, a happy smile like the rest of his life appeared on his face. After a good film, Xiao Yang looked at Luo Laro with a sad face and said with a bitter smile. Laro Luo, do you know that after your previous words, I have been thinking about how to separate the medicine tripod and sell it again. If you don't say, Luo Tianding, who ranks second in the list of Tianding, will be destroyed by your word. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Luo Laro burst into laughter, stroked his beard with his dry palm, looked at Xiao Yang jokingly and said with a smile. Ha ha, smelly boy, do you really think the ranking of Tianding is the second in the list? If you want to destroy Luo Shanding with one blow, your strength should at least come from the emperor's territory. Moreover, the strength of the master of the medicine tripod is the same level as that of the Dao Qi master. If you want to destroy the medicine tripod, you must first solve its master. As you said, the medicine tripod was received from the last master, which shows that he did not die in a real sense before, and the medicine tripod cannot be completely damaged, which makes Luo Tianding repaired the possibility of recovery. Hearing Luo Laro's words, Xiao Yang suddenly rekindled hope again. Since Luo Laro said so, the repair of Luo Tianding is naturally just around the corner. Although it is not clear how long the waiting time will take, at least, it makes Xiao Yang's heart have a bottom for the time being. After a long time, Xiao Yang just recovered, looked at Luo Laro, smiled and asked. Luo Laro, don't you know what materials are needed to repair Luo Tianding this time? Luo Laro heard the speech, but in Xiao Yang's slightly surprised eyes, he smiled and shook his head. Little fellow, this Qianyang Qingjin unusual material is like your dark heavy ruler. If you want to repair it, you can only rely on Qianyang Qingjin, and the rarity of that kind of thing is no worse than that of Yang meteorite Shentai. They are all things that can be met but not sought. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang nodded. In a sense, the rarity of the green gold in the sky is more rare than the black iron in the flame, which is undeniable. Seeing Xiao Yang nodding, Luo took a deep breath, and then continued to say. Therefore, I don't expect you to find Qianyang Qingjin. As long as you can control any different fire in the future, I promise to repair this medicine tripod to more than 90%. After all, at the end of the day, the only thing that can make Qianyang Qingjin integrate perfectly is different fire. Hearing this, Xiao Yang could not help but frown. Listening to the meaning of Luo Laro's words, it seems that even he is not sure that he can completely recover it. Luo Lao, can you say? It's impossible to completely repair this Luo Tianding? Xiao Yang frowned, and his words contained a little worry. In response, Luo shook his head with a smile and then explained to Xiao Yang. The reason why I say this is just because of the simple use of different fire. Although different fire can fuse all the damage cracks on the medicine tripod, there is one place that different fire can't repair. The words fell, Luo Laro's eyes turned to the medicine tripod, and the knife marks that had dispersed the knife chi. That small piece of Qianyang green gold was forcibly divided under that knife. If it can't make up for that small piece of Qianyang green gold, It's absolutely impossible to repair it even if it's the refining of different fire. At this point, Xiao Yang also understood. In the final analysis, it was because of the lack of materials. Xiao Yang naturally doesn't have to worry about the strange fire. The only thing he worries about now is the green gold in the sky. After all, this material is really too scarce. With good luck, he may not be able to find one in a long time. With bad luck, I'm afraid even if he searches the whole continent, he may not be able to find a trace. But anyway, now that Luo Tianding has a way to repair, Xiao Yang will never give up. Anyway, he doesn't have to rush to find Tianyang Qingjin for a moment. It's a big deal to find it slowly in the future. Now all he needs is a way to repair Luo Tianding, that's all. After calming down, Xiao Yang looked at Luo Laro with his dark eyes, bowed to the latter and said with a smile. Please don't worry, old Luo. I'll try my best to find the sun, green gold and strange fire. When I arrive, I'll bother old Luo to repair the Luo Tianding for the younger generation. Luo Laro raised his eyes. The turbid old eyes saw the firm color of Xiao Yang's face, and a touch of light flashed through his deep pupils. After secretly praising himself in his heart, Luo Laro also responded with a laugh. Ha ha, okay. With your confidence, the farmer is looking forward to the day when you find the strange fire and the green gold of the sky. At that time, the old man, I won't be polite. Ha ha ha. In the twinkling of an eye, it was the day when Xiao Yang and Luo Jin agreed to leave. Early in the morning, the wild ancient city, which had been silent for a night, had become noisy again. On the busy streets, the crowd was surging. It was a refreshing morning, but there was a stuffy and oppressive atmosphere in the air. Herbalist Guild. After a night's rest, Xiao Yang's state has reached its peak. At this time, Xiao Yang will undoubtedly be much faster than usual, whether in the control of soul power or fighting spirit. When Xiao Yang opened the door and was bathed in the first sunshine of the new day, he also found that in the courtyard outside the door, Jiyu Li Kai Phosphorus and his wife were sitting at the stone table, as if they had been waiting for a long time. When they saw Xiao Yang coming out, they also stood up immediately. Xiao Yang walked forward with a smile at the corners of his mouth and greeted them. Good morning, to President. Hey, I'm afraid you'll steal away if you don't hurry up, ha ha. Red Phosphorus smiled and said. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang felt helpless and smiled bitterly. He whispered to himself. Does he look like the kind of person who left without saying goodbye? Alas. As soon as you leave today, I don't know when you will meet again. Jiyu Li stared at Xiao Yang in front of him. His old face looked a little disappointed. After all, he was facing a generation with such excellent medicine refining skills. No matter which medicine refining guild he was in, he would not want him to leave. However, Jiyu Li also knows that Xiao Yang's future is far broader than they think. Just relying on the small place of the wild ancient city, he really can't keep him. Even if he stays, he will only bury Xiao Yang. This is the last thing they want to see. Sometimes, letting go may be the best support and help for him. Hearing Jiyu Li's words, Xiao Yang was silent for a while. He didn't know about it. After all, at present, Xiao Yang still knows nothing about the so-called four ancient sects. I'm afraid he will bother Luo Jin again. With the power of his Cloud Hermit Pavilion, they must know well about the four ancient sects. Oh, well, don't say any more. If you say more, it will become grinding and chirping. It's like a woman. Let's go. We'll send you there. Mr. Luo must have been in a hurry. Seeing Xiao Yang's silence, Red Phosphorus sighed low, and smiled at them. Jiyu Li's face changed slightly when he heard Mr. Luo in his words. This Mr. Luo is their title to Luo Jin, the leader of Union Pavilion. This is also to avoid exposing Luo Jin's identity when it's unnecessary. At this moment, Jiyu Li remembered that he patronized himself and others, but almost forgot that there was another Luo Jin. Immediately, Jiyu Li quickly recovered and hurriedly said, in that case, let's go first. Mr. Luo should have arrived. After all, we can't always let others wait for us there. After that, Jiyu Li first turned around and quickly flew away towards the north of the city. Later, Xiao Yang and Red Phosphorus looked at each other, but they both smiled. They didn't hesitate any more immediately. They moved their body, stepped on the void, quickly caught up with Jiyu Li in front, and the three flew away with their shoulders in the direction of Muzhuang in the north of the city. In a short moment, the three people have come to the location of Muzhuang in the north of the city. Sure enough, Luo Jin and Shenlaro have been waiting here for a long time. In addition, Qin Zhong is also here. As for Zhong Li, he has recovered in 3 days, but he still can't act at will. After knowing the news that Xiao Yang is leaving, although he wanted to send Xiao Yang, he was finally stopped by Xiao Yang and is still working in the Medicine Refining Association. In the eyes of the three people at the moment, in addition to the three people who are familiar with Jiu Li and red phosphorus, there is a strong figure standing on the left side of Luo Jin and looking at Xiao Yang with a smile. This person is Qingfeng of Shenling family. Xiao Yang smiled. Today, it really gathered all the major forces of the wild ancient city together. When they came near, a group of people looked at each other and smiled, and then they no longer hesitated. A group of people moved and quickly flew away to the square outside Muzhuang. The wild ancient city has unwritten regulations. Those with strength below half-emperor are not allowed to fly in the sky over the wild ancient city. At the moment, this menacing group of people immediately provoked a wave of sight in the city below. In the city below, everyone looked at Xiao Yang and his party in the sky in surprise. Especially after someone recognized Xiao Yang in front, the look in their eyes suddenly became frightened. The 7 people in this line seem to be strong at the semi-emperor level. At the moment, they are heading in the direction of Muzhuang in the north of the city. That's the rock owl. Is he looking for Mu Han's trouble again? Seeing this terrible scene in the sky, people immediately had all kinds of speculation in their hearts. Almost everyone thought that Xiao Yang should fight against Mu Han. When this scene in the sky was seen by all the people in the city, it was only a short time, and the wild ancient city suddenly boiled. However, in 3 days, the rock owl gathered a group of semi-imperial strongmen to prepare for the encirclement and suppression of Mu Han. The news immediately spread around the whole wild ancient city like wings. In the last 3 days, the rock owl once again gathered a group of semi-imperial strongmen, showing their sharp edges and pointing to the north of the city to admire the cold. After today, I'm afraid there will be no such person as Mu Han in this wild ancient city. There are 7 semi-imperial strongmen in this line. Moreover, under the exploration of some semi-imperial strongmen in the city, among the 7 people in this line, except Xiao Yang and Qin Zhong, there are already 4 8-star semi-imperial strongmen. Among them, the strong young man was unable to see through his strength, which also shocked the semi-imperialist strong in the city. The person who can make them unable to explore the exact strength is actually a 9-star and half-emperor. That is to say, this young and strong young man is even more terrible than Xiao Yang. He is a 9-star and half-emperor. In this way, plus the 2 in Xiao Yang's body, in the void at the moment, there are 4 8.5 emperors and 3 9.5 emperors hidden in Xiao Yang's 7 people. It's frightening to think about Xiao Yang's strength. Such an array is enough to sweep any force in the wild ancient city. However, their purpose today is Mu Han in the north of the city. Tut tut. It seems that Mu Han will die today. Unexpectedly, this rock owl has such great ability. Please invite so many semi-emperor strongmen, tut tut. Fortunately, he didn't conflict with him at the beginning. Immediately, the semi-imperial strongmen among the major forces in the city were secretly amazed. The strength shown by Xiao Yang was no longer comparable to them. Now the only thing they can think of is to make more contact with Xiao Yang and try to make friends with Xiao Yang after this matter. After all, anyway, one more friend is better than one more enemy. In the twinkling of an eye, when the people in the wild ancient city were shocked by Xiao Yang and his party, Xiao Yang and his party had come outside Muzhuang in the north of the city. The square, which used to be crowded, is now empty. On the periphery of the square, the scene 3 days ago is repeated again. Countless people gathered here, looking at Xiao Yang and his party who fell in the square at the moment, as if they were waiting for a good play. In the middle of the square, Xiao Yang slowly fell into shape. They glanced back at the crowd around the square and couldn't help frowning slightly. It seemed that Luo Jin thought of something. Luo Jin raised his eyebrows, turned his eyes, looked at Xiao Yang, and said with a joking smile, "Ha ha, brother Yang Xiao, it seems that the thing you are leaving is really a big event for the savages. So many people gather here to give you a gift. I'm afraid Luo is the only one in the savage ancient city. Ha ha ha." As soon as he said this, several people around him also echoed and laughed. Although they all knew the reason, no one was willing to say more. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang immediately smiled helplessly and shook his head. He could think that if he walked such a long way, he would be discussed repeatedly for thousands of times. If he stayed any longer, he really didn't know whether he could come out and meet people. "Why do you look sad when you are watched by so many people? You know, I don't want such treatment yet." Seeing Xiao Yang shaking his head and sighing, Luo Jin also joked again, which attracted several people around to laugh constantly. At the same time, Xiao Yang also got a big white eye. Since you want such treatment, it's not easy. Report your identity in public at the scene. I think even the old ghost Mu Han should be respectful to you. At the smell of the speech, Luo Jing turned her mouth and remained silent. Jiu Li and Red Phosphorus stared at Luo Jin with empty and secret eyes. The essence of the turbid old eyes twinkled. On the contrary, Qin Zhong on the other side frowned with big eyes and small eyes. He looked at several people in front of him, and his heart was full of doubts. Among the 7 people at the moment, he is the only one who doesn't know Luo Jin's identity. While several people were talking and laughing, the door of Muzhuang was also opened again. Then, an old man who limped out slowly and looked at the 7 Xiao Yang in the center of the square. This person is Mu Han. Mu Han came forward, and the atmosphere in the field immediately became tense. It was like a big war was coming. There was a feeling of mountain rain and wind all over the building. With Mu Han's appearance, the people outside the square could not help whispering. Looking at Mu Han's eyes, they also contained a little pity. After all, anyway, he was one of the wild double overlords. His past brilliance is even less than that of the whole league. Together with the array, he can cultivate to such a situation together with his cultivation, which is enough to prove his achievements. Unfortunately, all these brilliant achievements, placed in front of today's young generation, are belittled as worthless. The achievements, fame and wealth of his life are like a ruminant dog under the glory of the rock owl. After the battle 3 days ago, Mu Han's face still looked pale. The original deep pupils also looked grey and white, and his breath was not the same as before. Mu Han leaned on a crutch in his right hand. No one helped him, and he didn't want to be helped. For this reason, he has killed many people in the villa. At this time, although Muzhuang still looks brilliant on the surface, in fact, its internal personnel have died and fled. Mu Han was dressed in plain clothes. The original glory was gone. When he looked carefully, at his left shoulder, the original position of his left arm was empty at the moment. Seeing this scene, the people outside couldn't help but exclaim to themselves that Mu Han in front of him had become a one-armed old man, but even so, they didn't dare to underestimate him. The skinny camel is bigger than the horse. Moreover, Mu Han has not reached that level. Although his breath seems weak, anyone can know that if there were no Xiao Yang and his party, even if all the people present would not be his opponent. Staring at Xiao Yang and his party in the middle of the square opposite Zheng Li's hen, his cold and grey eyes stared at Xiao Yang. Although his face was calm, there was endless resentment and killing in the depths of his pupils. What are you doing here? Mu Han's face was calm, staring at Xiao Yang in front of him, and asked in a flat tone. The bland tone has no emotion at all, and there is no change in the look on the old face. It is like facing a group of people who have never met, which is very calm. But at the moment when the words came out, the people outside could feel that the atmosphere between heaven and earth became more and more heavy. Invisibly, it's good that there is a mountain, which is pressed on people's chest, making everyone's breath outside the field a little hurried. Aware of the changes between heaven and earth, Xiao Yang and others could not help but frown. This strange atmosphere actually affected them. Play tricks. Red Phosphorus's temper was already impatient, and then he was oppressed by this strange feeling. He burst into anger in his heart. He immediately gave a sharp drink and took half a step forward. The breath of 8 stars and half emperors immediately swept away. At the same time, the strange atmosphere pressed on everyone's chest was also broken. The strange atmosphere suddenly broke, but Mu Han was indifferent to it. He gave a dull look at Red Phosphorus, just like an old man at dusk. Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed slightly and looked at Luo Jin and Jiu Li. A moment later, Xiao Yang looked at Xiong Muhon and said in a flat tone, "Master Mu, we are not here to trouble you today. We just want to borrow this transmission array from you." Xiao Yang's voice fell. Mu Han's calm old face couldn't help but set off a ripple. Xiao Yang, in front of him, only hurt him 3 days ago and broke his arm. Today, only 3 days ago, he came carelessly to ask him for help. In the face of this dramatic scene, he couldn't help but want to ridicule, but Mu Han at the moment was not in the mood. Staring at Xiao Yang's grey eyes, it still seems that Jiu Jing has no waves. At least, from the surface, Mu Han at this time is like a retired person who doesn't know the world. A moment later, Mu Han slowly opened his mouth under the eyes of all the people outside. "Oh!" An inexplicable smile made Xiao Yang's face change slightly. His eyes narrowed, and the cold light flickered. He stared at Mu Han, who seemed to look at him unconsciously. There was an invisible pressure in the air, which made the people outside the field change their faces slightly. Under the invisible pressure, Their breathing became a little hasty again. The old man is hard to support with one arm now. He is no longer able to follow this array. Sir, find someone else. Mu Han's face was flat, he spoke slowly word by word, and his voice fell. His weak body turned slowly with the help of the crutch in his hand, and wanted to retreat into Mu Zhuang. Seeing this, Xiao Yang could not help but change his face slightly. The red phosphorus immediately gave a cold hum again. With a wave of his big sleeve, he fought with each other and shot away at Mu Han in an instant. At the same time, he also drank coldly in his mouth, saying, Mu Han, as far as I know, the array depends on the power of the soul. You are clearly deliberately making trouble. With the angry sound of red phosphorus, Mu Han, who had just turned around, suddenly stepped. He leaned on his right hand with a crutch, and his 5 fingers clung to the black iron crutch in the palm. The crutch touched the ground and instantly shook the bluestone plate at Mu Han's feet into a pile of powder. Bang! At the same time, Mu Han gave a sudden bang behind him. The fighting spirit of red phosphorus exploded in the void. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang and others in the field couldn't help but change their faces slightly. From the attack just now, Mu Han's soul power is obviously much stronger than that 3 days ago. He's afraid that his soul power in the realm of reunification is approaching the later stage of the realm of reunification. It seems that in the 3 days after being badly hurt by Xiao Yang, Mu Han should have entered a certain ethereal state, which makes his soul power be greatly improved in such a short time. In this regard, Xiao Yang was silent and didn't know whether it was a blessing in disguise. When the fighting spirit exploded out of thin air, Mu Han also turned back to his body with a gloomy face and stared at Xiao Yang and others. His thin body was trembling. His excited mood made his eyes scarlet, and he couldn't help laughing angrily, saying, I'm making trouble. You said I deliberately made trouble for you. Ha ha. Staring at Xiao Yang and others in front of him, Mu Han's gloomy face suddenly became sharply distorted. Staring at Xiao Yang and others, his eyes were full of endless cruelty and killing intention. At the same time, he also met again and angrily scolded, saying, Why, I broke my arm 3 days ago, but I still have to smile after 3 days. If you say I'm making trouble, what's my broken arm? Mu Han roared wildly, and his voice increased from the initial low to hoarse, but he was still roaring angrily. If he could not wait to kill the 7 people in front of him alone. Up to now, anyone who is related to Xiao Yang can't help but have a killing intention. Even if he has never met, Mu Han's killing intention still increases. In the face of Mu Han's almost crazy roar, Xiao Yang looked indifferent. The reason why Mu Han was cut off is that he is to blame. The dragon has an inverse scale, and those who touch it are angry, and Xiao Yang's inverse scale is all the people who have love and righteousness with him. Whenever someone touches one of them, Xiao Yang will kill the other without hesitation. Mu Han is not dead. In his opinion, this is the last concession. If Luo Jin hadn't come forward, he couldn't live to this day. Hehe, Master Mu, I think you should feel lucky. Just breaking one arm is better than losing your life. Suddenly, a light smile came out. Behind Xiao Yang, Luo Jin slowly flew forward and stood in front of Xiao Yang. His eyes were indifferent. He stared at Mu Han with a smile on his face and said with a smile. Seeing Luo Jin, Mu Han suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked at the former carefully. Then Mu Han said in a deep voice, Are you the boy 3 days ago? Upon hearing the speech, Luo Jin gave a non-committal chuckle and said, Hehe, if it weren't for me, you would have lost not only an arm, but your old life. Mu Han frowns. Although Luo Jin is not used to hearing this, it is undeniable that he is telling the truth. If it were not for the young man in front of him, Luo Jin would have been killed by Xiao Yang 3 days ago. At the thought of Xiao Yang's violent state that could not be suppressed 3 days ago, he was finally forcibly pressed down by the young man in front of him. Based on this alone, Mu Han dared not underestimate the young man in front of him. It's impossible for ordinary people to pull Xiao Yang back from his violent state. Who are you? I don't know whether it was because Luo Jin saved his life 3 days ago or out of fear for him in his heart. Mu Han's tone of voice eased a lot without intuition. The next moment, with a crisp snap of his fingers, Luo Jin looked at Mu Han with a smile, raised his chin slightly and paused. Under the expectant eyes, he smiled and said, Hehe, that's a good question. As soon as he said this, there was a cry everywhere. Jiu Li couldn't help laughing. Unexpectedly, Luo Jin didn't forget to entertain himself at this time. I'm Luo Jin. Maybe you haven't heard of this name, but I have another identity. I must be familiar with Master Mu. Luo Jin looked at Mu Han with a smile, as if he was deliberately waiting for each other's inquiry. Seeing Luo Jin's appearance, Mu Han was also surprised. Even if the young man in front of him was not an ordinary person, his behavior was too much. However, after a long time, under the gaze of countless people, Mu Han also stared at Luo Jin with a trace of doubt in his heart, asked the latter and said, Tell me, what's your other identity? Hearing the speech, Luo Jin grinned and glanced across the audience again. A moment later, he slowly opened his mouth in the slightly impatient eyes of the people and said, My other identity is the Lord of Union Pavilion. The voice didn't fall, and then the next moment, without waiting for the people outside the square to return to their senses, Luo Jin was one-handed negative, waved his right big sleeve and waved it in front of him. At the same time, he only heard a crisp sound like the collision of jade bones, and a glittering white jade fan appeared in Luo Jin's hand. Brush the jade and fan it out. The pavilion master is now silent. When the words came out, everyone present at the moment, except Xiao Yang who knew Luo Jin's identity, at this moment, everyone in the field was suddenly stiff, with unbelievable look in their eyes, staring at Luo Jin holding a jade fan. Cloud-hidden pavilion. Brush the jade fan. How possible? After a long time, Mu Han seemed to be frightened by something. The fierce voice exclaimed. A pair of dark eyes stared at Luo Jin tightly, and his heart was full of disbelief. Luo Jin raised a sneer at the corners of his mouth, stared at Mu Han sarcastically, and sneered. Oh, why, don't you believe it? Impossible. The cultivation of the Master of Union Pavilion has already broken through the Do Emperor, and you are only an 8-star-and-a-half Emperor, you can never be the Master of Union Pavilion, Mu Han retorted wildly with a ferocious face. He had detected the breath of the Master of Union Pavilion. The terrible breath has definitely transcended the existence of fighting Emperor. Luo Jin in front of him is just an 8-star-and-a-half Emperor. His strength is much weaker than him. He must not be the Master of Union Pavilion. It's not impossible. Master Mu, in front of you, this is indeed the leader of my Cloud-Hidden Pavilion and the real helmsman of the Cloud-Hidden Pavilion. Just when Mu Han kept shouting and arguing in his mouth, Shen Laro came forward from the back of Xiao Yang, stared at Mu Han, and said with a faint smile. This can. But I clearly detected the strength of the pavilion leader of Union Pavilion. Don't doubt it anymore. What you detected at that time could only be an elder guarding the Cloud-Hidden Pavilion. Just because he is stronger than you think he is the leader of the Cloud-Hidden Pavilion. I have to say, Master Mu, you have been in this wild ancient city all your life, and your thoughts are so pedantic. Do you really think that the controller behind any power must be a bad old man? At the smell of the speech, Mu Han's old face was twitching angrily. Luo Jin disagreed, sneered, and opened his mouth in a flat tone and said with a smile. Oh, Master Mu, I don't know the master of this pavilion. May I borrow your transmission array? When he heard the speech, Mu Han's body trembled violently. He took a deep breath only after a good moment. He was calm and forced a stiff smile on his face. His voice was a little hoarse. Your cabinet leader is joking. The cabinet leader has saved the old man's life. Even if the old man does his best, he must open the transmission array. Hearing this, Luo Jin's mouth slowly aroused a satisfied radiance, but before he could speak, Mu Han narrowed his old eyes, and the cold voice of words came out again, and the smile just appeared on Luo Jin's mouth also dispersed. This video will end here.